All right, so the talk today, like I was going to keep it interactive, right? So I wanted to talk about, yeah, and by the way, my name is Divyesh Vaidya, so I'm with Dell EMC, focused on go-to-market around solutions, focused mostly around SAP. So these are sort of, as we look into, help customers move to SAP HANA, and then also, SAP Leonardo, which is their, sort of IoT-based framework. Like, it's sort of looking at key considerations that we need to look at as you're helping those customers move, right? So I'm going to focus on these key aspects of that, right? And it's also a sort of a progression as well. So if you look at the first part here around simplified, so today we already have a lot of SAP customers. Yeah, they have like hundreds of thousands of them. They are running on their legacy ERP applications. We want to be able to modernize that to a new infrastructure so that it helps them to basically consolidate their environment, make things run more efficiently. So it's more of a, not moving their environment to something totally new, but, keeping their software, everything, but keeping it on a modern platform. So the next step there is, as they're considering their move to HANA or their new ERP S/4HANA, looking to say, okay, well, what are the key considerations they need to have as they're doing the migrating from an infrastructure and manageability, automation, that perspective around that. And then beyond that, it's just like, running that in a, when we're talking about the cloud operating model, so what that means for us is that when somebody says cloud, it's a very nebulous term. So what does cloud mean, right? So, it's more of a model whereby you're talking about things like self-service provisioning, talking about automation, right? Some of the things like cloud type benefits that customers get. We want to give our point of view on what we do from a, what's considered cloud, right? So it's be private cloud, multi-cloud, public cloud, managed service, right? So there are different variations of that. So we'll talk about that. And the last thing there is that the H2 Core piece is where you're now able to derive system of intelligence information from your data that's collected from like sensor data across different environments, let's say, in a manufacturing plant if you're a manufacturing customer, and apply that system of intelligence to the ERP data that you already have in your system. So those are the key characteristics to discuss here. And like I said, please feel free to stop me if you have any questions along the way. So this may or may not be news to you guys, but I just want to touch on that, right? So we are sort of looking at where SAP is going, and then we're sort of looking to provide the right best infrastructure around that. So this is their new marketing terminology, Intelligent Enterprise. So it consists of like things like the Intelligent Suite of Applications, which is basically all S/4HANA. That's their new application environment, all based on HANA. So that's everything that's listed here. Then you have these things called Intelligent Technologies. So now you're augmenting your ERP type data with things like AI, blockchain, IoT, all these modern things to be able to now get more intelligent information outside just your ERP data. And then the new part that they introduced here is around a data management piece, right? So the data management suite is looking at like getting, how do I manage this data? So there's a product called Data Hub, which is essentially not just looking at your SAP data, but like your data across all the different things that you may have collected in whichever form, keep that data in place, but be able to extract the information out of that, and then you're able to act on that. So that's the piece that's the new thing that SAP is doing around data management. So we've got to kind of touching on the things that we provide from an infrastructure perspective to support where SAP is headed. Now, when we're looking at these customer journeys, right? So we see most of the customers that we deal with are sort of somewhere in this continuum. Yeah, and then just looking at most of these customers are running their SAP on some of these legacy databases, right? Whether they be Oracle, most of them are on Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, and they're looking at the way they are migrating is a two-step process where they migrate their applications to run everything on HANA instead of an older database. Or they move everything from an application perspective into running on HANA directly on S4 HANA, right? So it's either a two-step process or a one-step process based on the customers. So it's like on how comfortable they are with moving there. And then the other part, I guess, like I said, is looking at SAP Leonardo to be able to augment that data with all the all the technologies. So we sort of kind of look at these objectives here around simplify, right? As I mentioned, to be able to get if you want to keep things in place, to be able to modernize your platforms, migration, running, just like automating your environment, and then enabling edge data. I'll skip the spiel here. So I want to talk about, so like I said, based on what I said, I was broadly talk about three things. One is the infrastructure for SAP landscapes or existing environment and SAP HANA. I want to talk about some of the cloud operating model around the how to sort of what's our point of view on that, and the H2 Core enablement for SAP Leonardo. So when I look at the typical SAP customers, so they have this, setup whereby you have your test dev environment, your QA, production environments, right? So it's like, that's typically the way it's set up. And so for a lot of customers who want to be able to, keep that in place, what we are recommending is moving to modern platforms with, let's say, for example, things like all-flash storage, to be able to gain more efficiencies around performance. Also looking at things like consolidation to be able to instead of having siloed environments, bring everything under control to basically use the power of your modern infrastructure to bring everything together. So if you look at some of the things that we have in our portfolio, our servers, storage, and then more importantly the data protection pieces, so you can have those as piecemeal things. Or you can also look at things like converged platforms, so you can basically put everything together into one form factor, and you'll be able to sort of have a mixed workload discussion now to do a landscape consolidation and make it a lot simpler environment to work in. So that's sort of the first step that we talk about with a lot of customers who are still in there just modernizing their platforms. So the second piece here is around the automation, right? So if you think about the SAP Basis, the administrators, they spend a lot of their time on just doing things like like these system clones, system copy, refresh, all those kind of things, which takes a lot of time. So it's probably like several days to accomplish that. So SAP is now actually, they've done a lot of iterations of this. They have come out with this latest iteration of their software landscape manager, or Llama. And what we have done is that we have done an integration with Llama called this ESI, storage integrator. So what that means is that as the basis administrators use Llama for the system copy, refresh, cloning, start, stops, all those processes they have to follow, it actually have a direct API integration into our storage. So if you need to create more storage, you create LUNs, like remove, copy, etc. So all those things are done sort of at the same time, so that we are really reducing the amount of time it takes to be able to do so that integration, again, like I said, this requires like a SAP certification, so it takes a lot of time to do that. But with having that set up, it really helps the customers really reduce their time to be able to accomplish those things. So these are all the different kind of activities that's available in Llama. Just to flash this, kind of just talking about things like, for example, like they got this landscape visualization. Managing HANA, right? So this is something new that Llama provides. This post-copy automation, it's a pretty laborious manual process, right? So Llama is helping with trying to get all those things under control. And then, what we are trying to do is to basically help them with all these different areas where your basis administrators spend a lot of time. And then, we basically are looking at doing that with, all the different storage platforms that we provide from Dell EMC. So that's the piece around, like I said, we talk about the modernizing the landscape, doing a lot of automation on that to be able to reduce your time to run your operations. The next part here is now looking at from an SAP HANA perspective. So you're talking about the landscape, so you're looking at just running your SAP ERPs on your existing databases, whether it be Oracle, right? So we talked about that. Now, as customers are looking to migrate to HANA, so we have a list of things that we are doing, like around certified infrastructure, and next slide will talk about that. But our point of view is that there are multiple ways to be able to provide infrastructure for SAP HANA. This tailored data center integration is whereby it's a customized thing, so they choose the best of breed server storage network they can use to create their environment. And then that gives you the choice that they want to make. And then also so that's where we basically see a lot of our larger customers go to that. So if I look at the two spectrums of how HANA is delivered, you either have an appliance model, and this is how this SAP HANA had started as an appliance model. So it's basically a scale-up system server with built-in storage. And then we actually provide from a factory install the software, the operating system, SUSE, SAP, delivered that to the customer with built-in services. So that's actually a pretty good model for smaller customers. We have a lot of smaller customers who use that. They may not have the SAP expertise. But for larger customers who do have a lot of SAP expertise, or they're working with a system integrator, they usually look at the TDI model, whereby and look at things like servers. So we offer rack or blade servers, lots of different storage systems that we provide based on and again, these are all from a performance standpoint or certification, they all meet and exceed the criteria that SAP has. So that it's a more, and then we have our sales specialists who can help our customers on making the right decisions on where they need to go. So you have either a build your own, or you have a converged systems, or the latest one is Hyperconverged. This is where now you are able to also look at applying Hyperconverged software-defined server storage network to SAP HANA. So that I'll talk a little bit about that. So that's the latest piece that just happened about 6 months ago. Any questions so far?
Would the Hyperconverged stuff be qualified under the TDI model? I mean, that's how it's.
So yeah, it's yes and no. So it's sort of delivered as a quote unquote appliance, but it's considered TDI, right? So it's like when I say it's an appliance, because the way that the SAP has done the certification is for the whole stack, right? So it's not piece parts. Well, no, I mean, yeah, but I don't mean it that way. I mean, like for example, that we're talking about VxRail, so that's a platform that we offer, which is already in an appliance model, but it's considered delivery as TDI, right? Because the thing is that from our perspective, an appliance model from a delivery standpoint means you got to have all these software and everything pre-built and delivered that, right? So we would actually not do that. We would do that, just ship the server and have the integrator work with the customer to do the deployments. Yep. Yep. So let me talk a little bit about the different options that we provide, right? So you have our scale-up servers, and then we basically have 2 and 4 socket servers. Now the latest generation that's coming up is Intel with their Cascade Lake and then more importantly, Optane, which is their, like a memory, cache memory. So with that, as it says over here, we are able to address with a 4-socket system up to 6 terabytes of RAM. What Intel SAP are saying is that we can actually, with mixed workloads, you can go up to 18 terabytes of RAM. All right, that's just crazy. Now again, that requires half terabyte of DIMM. It's going to be very expensive right now, so you got to be able to right-size that, because you'll be using a smaller DIMM count, and then get like I said, over a period of time, that'll get cheaper. But the option is there to get to otherwise to get to 18 terabytes RAM, you're looking at a 16 socket. So it's like the big difference in scale. So that's one thing it start with, just as a rack server. From a storage perspective, like I said, that you have lots of different choices here. So we have things like our SC line or Unity lines, which are more mid-range. So for customers who are more is a price performance standpoint, or if you want somebody with a lot of scale, we've got our Power Max. Extreme IOs are all flash. Although it started with all flash, now all flash is available with all the different storage systems that we have. So again, like I said, we have a lot of different choices, a lot of different price points to address the whole market, right? Depending on the smaller customer to the largest customer. And then, as I mentioned earlier, so VX Block is our converged system. So you basically are looking at mixed workloads all in one. And then the main thing here about the VX Block is that from a simplified operations and lifecycle assurance, also provides software to be able to update that, so on a regular basis. So it actually, so there's basically all the maintenance and all that stuff is provided by Dell. So you can actually do regular software refreshes, and all those things are done sort of off-site. And as I mentioned, that the latest thing, you had a question about the hyperconverged, right? So we have two models around hyperconverged. We have this model VxRail, which is based on vSAN. So we work with VMware vSAN to be able to provide the storage piece of that. And again, the main point here is that this also has a software automation capabilities built in, so you can actually do regular updates, and all those things are provided for you. And then we also partner with Nutanix on our Dell XC line to be able to also provide Nutanix as the hypervisor for providing support for hyperconverged infrastructures. So the cool thing about this is that, it took SAP a long time to get to the point where HCI is now supported. So you can, for customers who have moved their whole data center to software defined, SAP is not in a silo. You can also bring SAP into that and then do the same thing with the rest of it. So we talked about the from a infrastructure for SAP HANA, right? So now we'll talk about another piece which is very important, is around data protection. These are mission critical data that you're talking about, your ERPs, et cetera, right? So it's like, what are considerations over there. So from a data protection perspective, like you sort of have this continuum of things that you'll want to look at, right? So you want to be able to persist that data, high availability, right? So it's like within a data center, you have to probably have a mirror your systems, right? So SAP actually does provide system level replication, so that you can actually have two servers, and they do system replication. So you have one is systems available in case of a high failover, so high availability. And what SUSE provides is a clustering technology, right? So you're able to now view those things as a single cluster. So in case there is a failover, then this SUSE recognizes that, and then you're able to sort of fail over, right? So they got these keep alive agents, so you'll be able to understand if there's a failover, and then if you fail over, and then get still operational, so there's no customer impact. Moving on from there, support for disaster tolerance across data centers. So the same technology, like high availability, when sort of moving from a server to server within a specific data center. You're actually moving from a data center to a second one, or it could be even a third one, right? So depending on how customers have set up their data centers, you can have one to one, one to many. So there's different ways to be able to skin that. And then this can be accomplished. I mentioned system replication, which is SAP's replication technology. We can also use storage level replication, which is the stuff that the Dell EMC provides. So you have, and a lot of customers look at combinations of the two. If this is a virtualized platform, VMware also supports some of these capabilities. You need the SAP piece if you want to be able to keep the application level information on there. So that's where SAP brings that replication piece in there. And the last piece is important is the backup and disaster recovery, and I'll talk about it on the next slide here. So we have backup tools available which are SAP certified. Now again, you do have to go through an SAP certification process to be able to provide this. The way this thing works is actually these are native tools that are built in at API level into things that the SAP administrators use today. Like for example, HANA Studio, Cockpit, these are tools that they use. So they can invoke an API call to back up, and that it integrates directly into our backup software and into our backup storage devices. So it's like a one-touch thing. So that makes it a lot easier for customers to be able to back up their mission-critical data. Okay, so this is again a very important piece. We talk about the infrastructure, talked about the data protection piece. The other part that this talks about here is around data temperatures. So think about SAP HANA. It's a in-memory technology, still very expensive, right? I mean, you may have like 50 terabytes of data you're keeping in your Oracle database on a SAN. Now all of a sudden you don't want all that stuff, 50 terabytes in memory. That's a really expensive proposition. So there are various ways to be able to address that. And then again, like I said, we have few folks who can work with customers to work that part. So you have things like you can keep your hot data in your system, and there's a technology called dynamic tiering that SAP provides. So it basically provides an extension layer from one system to the other. So you have a warm data that you keep over there. And then you can use SAP IQ, or what used to be called Sybase. So they have a technology for things called NLS, which is so you're basically looking at cold data. And now you could also integrate that with Hadoop to now look at again raw data, right? So you can also bring in unstructured data as part of that. So I'll talk about that part in a little bit. But the whole idea there is that 50 terabytes of data, for example, that's sitting in a database doesn't all need to be in memory, right? Because you're only using a percentage of it at any given time. So you can sort of look at a way to be able to scale that out. And then we have obviously systems available for you to be able to keep data on your servers, built-in storage in there, and also hot and warm data. We have Isilon for scale out NAS to be able to give you unstructured data. You can use that for your Hadoop systems. So again, we're kind of mirroring the architecture that SAP provides, and we have the infrastructure to be able to take care of that. So again, the right sizing is a big piece over here. Yeah, Mike.
Just curious, is this something that if you've got an existing data set, you set up and tell the system initially what's hot, what's cold?
Yeah.
What's in between?
So yeah.
Does the system figure that out?
No, so this is still a manual process. I mean, I think with every iteration, SAP is making inroads into that. But today, it's still a manual process. You still have to figure out how you want to be able to keep your data. I mean, we've seen them making generational changes, but today, this stuff is not rocket science, unfortunately, yet. It's still a manual process. Yeah. Yeah. I meant to say, sorry, it is rocket science. Yes, you still have to figure it out. Okay. So then I want to talk about, just basically provide the, layers of all the infrastructure that you need to have, right? Your server, storage, network, your data protection pieces, how do you want to tier the data and all that, right? So now I want to talk about how, from a run perspective, what's the way to do that is, and then we talk about a cloud operating model, right? So what does a cloud operating model mean? Let me populate this. What we see is that although there's a lot of marketing hype that SAP itself provides around cloud, they are very nebulous about what cloud is, right? And when you talk to any customer, they think cloud, they think AWS, right? So yes, that's part of the equation, but the reality is that SAP itself says that it's over 3/4 of their customers who move to S4 HANA are still on premise. So that means that they're not still moving to the cloud, but they do want to benefit from a cloud model whereby they're looking at things like lifecycle assurance, simplified operations, right? So you'll be able to look at things like self-service provisioning, right? I'm a user. My IT guy doesn't want to be bothered every time they want to spin up a VM, right? So can I do that myself? And how and it's also from an operations perspective, how do I spin up new VMs? From a lifecycle perspective, how do I sort of scale up, scale down? All those things that your cloud model provides, we can have the similar type of characteristics available through VMware. By the way, VMware is part of Dell Technologies, right? So we have a big family of companies within Dell, including VMware. So we're partnering very closely with VMware to provide this. We have our Dell EMC infrastructure with VMware. We think about we realize as there's a software layer on top of that to be able to give you that layer for your cloud foundation. So as you're aware that VMware is also working with these cloud companies like with AWS to be able to migrate VM on-premise to off-premise. So you're basically, once you work with this, we do see the reality that customers will maybe want to move their test dev environment to a public cloud, but want to keep their production environment on-premise. So if you want to create that as a VM, you can move that VM directly from public cloud to on-premise, right? So you basically have really shrinking down the time it takes to do the operations. So that's the idea behind the way we look at from a cloud operating perspective, right? So we're looking at this as customers can do this as a private cloud. They can look at this as the multi-cloud approach, right? Where you have some pieces of your capabilities that are on-premise. You have other things like test dev, things that are not mission critical. You can have it in public cloud. So there are different ways to do it. But again, the whole idea is that the software layer is going to be the one that's orchestrating that, and that's similar across the board. And that's the approach that we are taking from a Dell perspective. Now, having said that, we do have also a managed service available called Virtustream. In fact, Virtustream was one of the first, before it was a private company, was the very first one that was providing SAP mission critical sort of managed service. Like everybody else was just doing more IaaS type models. We're looking at this as providing that for mission critical things like SAP. So we do have Virtustream available for customers that want to provide this or have this available as a managed service. And in fact, although Virtustream can take the whole managed service part all the way to providing SAP Basis Layer support, we also working with other system integrators that may want to have that basis layer. So in that case, Virtustream can go up to the IaaS layer, and you have the integrator who may want to provide that SAP services can come on top of that. So we have sort of from our perspective, our continuum is we have on-premise cloud and managed service that we offer. And then we are also basically an arms dealer to public cloud vendors, right? So they use a lot of our technology. So that's the cloud operating model that we are working under. And the third piece I want to talk about is the H2 Core piece, right? So this is again the new piece that SAP has introduced around taking existing or other new technology that are being incubated around artificial intelligence, blockchain, IoT, et cetera, that to be able to, how do I get that into, so you have your system of record, so that's all your SAP ERP data, and bringing in system of intelligence, and how do I integrate the two? So that's what we're going after over here. Now, as I was talking to him, earlier, the reality is that although a lot of the cloud companies are talking about IoT, there are use cases in which you have to execute at the edge, right? I mean, if you're doing an autonomous vehicle, I can't send my data to the cloud and wait for that to come back. So you have to have both models, right? So that's why an edge model whereby a lot of the edge compute's happening is very much a reality. So like I said, we're actually doing a lot of work with a lot of different partners, integrators, on a lot of different use cases. In some use cases, you need to take action immediately. Other use cases are it's more of a information collection that I can I'm not time bound, so I can do that later. In which case a cloud is fine, right? Putting it on a cloud. So from a Dell perspective, we've actually been in this business for a while. We all talk about IT, but there's also another set of folks called operations technology, the OT guys. Like for example, in the guys who are maintaining your plant, your facilities, right? So they're all manufacturing plants, right? They're all you guys on the OT side, which IT side never talked to, right? So this whole IoT things is actually a perfect way to be able to bring this together. Like there's a lot of data that's sitting out there in your, all your plant, for example, in your manufacturing plants. How do I collect that data and to be able to make some use out of it? So an example of that is things like predictive maintenance, right? So like let's say you're in a manufacturing plant and you basically have scheduled maintenance on all your equipment. And then that, so that doesn't mean that every equipment is going to fail at the same time. If you're able to collect that data and to be able to act on it, now you can tell, hey, like this part A is failing faster than part B, so let me go work on part A now rather than waiting on part B. So that's the part where we're actually trying to look at actually predictive maintenance to prevent any kind of outages, so to really shrink that time. So the way that we approach that is is a more, and I have the next slide which talks a little bit more about the reference architecture. So we have our edge devices, edge IoT gateways. So you can actually have these deployed. Now again, these are hardened. So it's again, you can basically have these as really small devices. It can be in mobile environments. You can put that in let's say a truck carrying frozen foods, right? So it's like it's got negative temperatures, but this is able to collect data from there to be able to look at the data like inside your fridge. So for one is a partner we're working with right now is around looking at digital supply chain with blockchain on top of that. So we're talking about a farm to fork scenario whereby you are delivering frozen food from your very origin to the supermarket, and then within that continuum, it may have to go through trucks, it may have to go through ships, it may have to stay in warehouses, right? So it's like it takes several days to make that transition. How do I ensure my end customer, let's say it's a supermarket, I'm delivering that frozen food, that there was never any variance in temperature, or it did not go above a certain point, so that because of that, I can assure the freshness of the food. So that's why SAP also has with Leonardo a blockchain on top of that. So we're actually working with a partner where we're looking at that digital supply chain scenario with blockchain on top of that to get that supply chain assurance. Also extend that out to things like pharmacies, right? When you're delivering medicine, for example, with the same kind of thing. So there's a lot of use case around that. So that's the piece where this is a very critical piece, because this is a mobile. We can work on mobile devices. It's hardened. It can work in different temperatures, different like scenarios, vibrations, etc. So you're able to collect all that data, and then send it back to the core. Could be on a cloud, or on premise, or whichever way it may be. to be able to now look at aggregating that data and to basically make sense out of that. And then the next part here is around Isilon, which is our collector of our unstructured data. Gobs, massive gobs of data. I want to be able to persist that. So I can put that in a offline Hadoop environment, so I'm able to keep all that unstructured data. And then that's where then AI comes into play, right? So it's like as I'm looking at this data, train the information to say, okay, well, what are my variances that I'm seeing? Because then that information that come back out to the edge to say that, as the data is coming into the edge, it's looking to see, hey, do I need to trigger on something, right? It's like, like some data I can throw away, some data I need to make sure that I capture that. So the machine learning piece can give that variance and then be fed into as a feedback loop into the edge to be able to look for that as the next step, right? So all these things are pretty cool. Where, like new technologies that we're actually working with, and we got actually data scientists in our labs who are actually working on all these scenarios. We're working with partners, so it's a pretty cool stuff going on right now. So here's an example of now again, this is not meant to say that this is the only way it works, but it's an example of how we're seeing bringing all these things together from a Dell Technologies perspective, right? Because when you look at all the different logos there, right? These are all part of the Dell Technology family, right? So you have going from left to right, you're collecting data regardless of whichever environment you're in, manufacturing, retail, oil and gas, whichever scenario it might be, whichever use case it may be, bring that data into the gateway, into IoT gateway. Now again, there may be cases in which the data needs to be processed right here. You may be, let's say, on an oil rig, and maybe disconnected from your data center, right? So I need to take action right now. So a lot of that data is right there. So you can either have data, do some stuff right here, or it may have to be forwarded on. Now, SAP has a software called Leonardo Edge. So we are actually certified for Leonardo Edge. So you can actually have Leonardo Edge running on this. So the Leonardo Edge can actually look at the data as it comes in and be able to act on it, right? Do I want to keep it? Do I want to throw it away? Do I need to take some action, right? So all that happens over here. Now again, this can be a scenario whereby, and that was a discussion again I was having with Abhinav earlier, depending on the size of the edge scenario, right? So if it's a manufacturing plant, for example, I may have tens of these all collecting data, but I want to process that locally. So I can basically have an edge compute scenario whereby I'm not even going to the cloud. I need to have this processed at a manufacturing floor to take any action right there locally. So that's this piece over here, right? So I can basically have a bunch of these all going into a edge server, which is actually making some kind of directional things that I need to do locally. And it could also then go out to the cloud, right? So we're talking about, you mentioned cloud platform earlier, right? So these are then connected to the cloud platform, or even data hub to be able to collect data from disparate devices, not just SAP, but could be other ones, and to be able to do a lot of the analysis over here. So that's the piece whereby you're looking at edge compute scenarios, looking at computing, as a central aggregation point. And then over here, the third point here, or before I get there, we also have the VMware piece that comes in. There's a new product out called Pulse, which is basically looking at managing your IoT devices. So one-to-many, you have a centralized, like as a vCenter kind of thing. From there, you can do software updates, patches, et cetera, right? I mean, all these things are sitting out in the middle of nowhere. How do I go out and service that? So you can actually use VMware Pulse to be able to remotely service these devices. And then coming back to, so we collected the data, we're processing the data, now we want to display the data, right? So that's where we want to be able to look at how do I now do end user or engagements. So we do a lot of things that we do with Pivotal, for example, around Cloud Foundry, looking at cloud native apps to be able to collect this data and to be able to now, how do I display this information to my customers, wherever the customers might be, right? Could be end user, could be somebody in the field, right? So there may be different type of display devices in all kinds of different different use cases. So that's the continuum we're talking about, and then we also again persisting all this data for offline usage in a Hadoop environment on Isilon. So again, you'll see variances of these based on use cases, but directionally this is a pretty good way to look at this as far as how what are the different ingredients that are involved in a H2 Core platform with in this case we're looking at SAP and Leonardo, but it can be generalized. Any questions around this? Okay. All right, so I'm going to close the talk then, I guess, just to reiterate some of the things that we talked about, right? So we mentioned 3 different areas that we are focused on from Dell EMC around SAP. And again, we had very close collaboration with SUSE on developing these environments. So that thing is pretty cool collaboration. Consolidating and simplifying the landscapes, right? So we're looking at customers who are not moving or migrating or anything right now, just trying to modernize their environments. And if they are looking at adopting HANA, we're there to basically provide them the right infrastructure, regardless of whether they want on-premise appliance, TDI, whether you want private cloud environments, right? So it's whichever environment they want. It could be something that looking at hyperconverged, if that fits into their data center. So that's what we're offering here. And then running in the cloud operating model, right? So it's looking at the automation, operations, lifecycle assurance, all those aspects that come into the cloud operating model. And then finally, now augmenting your infrastructure with a system of intelligence through IoT and big data. So that's my talk. Questions? Hopefully this was helpful. Good. Okay. Thank you very much.